So welcome everyone to Psalms for Life. And we want to thank Esther Ella Gorovich and family for sponsoring this talk on Psalms. And may it be a source of bracha, v'hatzlacha for her family in the merit of sharing Psalms and the holy words of King David with women around the world. Okay. So Psalm 1, which we did last week, described how fortunate those who cling to Hashem are. And it goes on, we didn't have time to cover this, but how those who don't cling to Hashem, who spurn his word, how they fail. And what we have in Psalm 2 is really, it's really quite an amazing psalm. I didn't realize how much I loved it until I really began to study it with a new eye, a way to bring it to you, which is different than how I've studied it in the past and shared it in the past. And in Psalm 2, we understand that this alludes to the War of Gog and Magog, that there are three levels that I'm going to address today. First is the historical level of the psalm and what was going on in King David's life at that time, which sometimes we can't do that for every psalm, but today's psalm we can. Then we're going to discuss it from the level of the psychospiritual and what we can take from it at a deep level with a lot of insights from Rabbi Nachman. And then what we're going to do is we're going to find, assuming we have time, David HaMelech's prophecy, King David's prophecy, which alludes to the War of Gog and Magog in the psalm. So we're going to begin with the first verse, Lama ragshu goyim ulumim yeku rik. Why do the nations or the people gather, and why do they talk in vain? Okay, so this term, the nations here and the people here, is strictly referring to the 70 nations of the world from a prophecy point of view. From King David's historical point of view, it was referring to the Philistines, who were the Philistines, who the recent invention of the Palestinians claim were their ancestors, which we know they weren't. And it also refers to anyone who disputes Hashem's preeminence and dominance and hashgacha, supervision of the world. So let's take that apart a little bit. What was going on in David HaMelech's life and King David's life? So at the time, King David had been in exile. We didn't get to this part of his life. We stopped at the point where he was anointed by by Samuel as the next king. And at the time, King Shaul wasn't necessarily so happy about that. But David became his son-in-law. He married Shaul's daughter, Michal, and he became very good friends with Yonasan, Jonathan. And that friendship is held up by the entire world. Even the Greeks view that friendship as such a beautiful friendship. From our perspective, we understand that friendship was very much about they were chavrusas, they were inspiring each other with Torah wisdom. And Yonasan and David HaMelech, David, who wasn't quite the king yet, he hadn't been crowned yet, were very good friends. And when there were wars going on, King Shaul felt very proud of the fact that he had led his people to victory alongside King David. We know King David was a warrior and a commander. But when they returned from some of the wars, the people shouted out, "Oh, Shaul, our hero, he slayed thousands, And David, he slayed tens of thousands. And that became this sort of turning point where Shaul's jealousy from David began to fester. And we don't have so much commentary on Shaul's jealousy about his son being so close with David. We really don't have so much, but it looked like David, Hamelech, who wasn't king yet, was taking over a lot of the relationships in Shaul's life, relationships with the people, relationships with family members. Now, of course, we know David didn't do this for any nefarious purposes. He had an ability to develop relationships due in large part to his refinement, his ability to look at the holiness in people, to connect with them, to bring out the good in them. And we understand that he always gave people the benefit of the doubt. And as we get further and further in Psalms, we'll see that he had to really be betrayed in order for him to recognize a friend had become an enemy. It wasn't like, there were whispers and gossips and he paid attention to it. Okay, he was a noble character. So anyway, there was this conflict beginning to fester. David went into exile, and when he was in exile and he was running from place to place, hopefully later on we'll get to that, it's not necessarily related to this psalm, the Philistines, the Philistines were attacking, and David was assaulted by them, by the Philistines, who were also after Shaul. And David was assaulted because they didn't want him to be king. The Philistines, what we have to understand about them was that they were very arrogant, and they didn't want to submit to the concept of Hashem ruling the world. Okay. They didn't have any feeling that they owed their lives to Hashem, no appreciation of Hashem or of his royal family down below, no appreciation of the anointed ones. Okay. And so the attack was both territorial, and it was designed to wipe out any holiness that was existing in the world at that time, and that would have gone right to David Hamelech. So what went on here a lot was that the battle became sort of the hallmark or the nugget of the future battle of the nations against Mashiach. Now, I mentioned Gog and Magog, the War of Gog and Magog, which I think in English is pronounced Gog and Magog. So what we'll call Gog and Magog. So this particular war, which we are in right now, this war is a spiritual war. It may very well be a physical war, but right now we're certainly in a technological / spiritual war, an information war, a brainwashing war, if you will. This war is when the nations rise up and they want to claim preeminence over the world, and they want to be in charge, not Hashem, Chas v'shalom. Of course, we know Hashem is in charge. And when the nations reject the idea of Hashem and his people, which is us, okay, and reject the idea of the true Mashiach, instead of the invented Mashiach that the West has. And also, you should know, Islam also has an invented Mashiach, Lahavdil. So when they reject that, that is part of the War of Gog and Magog. And the 70 nations, we know that there are 7 categories of nations in the world, each one with their own charming attributes, and negative attributes mixed in with some potentially good attributes. But when the nations rise up, what we have is this absolute battle for Tov over Ra, for good over evil. And this is the battle we're in. Now it coincides, it happens to coincide with the Parsha that we're about to enter, which is Parshas Toldos next week, where Yaakov battles the angel. Okay, and we'll talk about what that is. And we also see that this is, as we learn Psalms, we see that relates to everything that's going on, no matter when we're learning them or saying them. We just have to look very closely. So the 70 nations, why they are linked to Gog and Magog is revealed to us by Gematria, and the Gematria of Gog and Magog is 70. So we see the parallel there, and we see this coming through in this psalm. So then it goes on that the kings of the earth take their stand, and the lords conspire secretly against Hashem and against his anointed. So that, again, the thing to impress upon yourself is that was going on during David's lifetime. It was, the psalm was composed with prophecy that this also related to the future. And for us, what we can take from this is this idea that we have this battle going on internally. We have a battle going on in which the nations, okay, the 70 nations inside of us, so to speak, want to reject Hashem's preeminence. This is called throwing off the yoke of Torah, God forbid. Okay, and we see that in the past 200 years, this has become a reality. It began in shortly before Rebbe Nachman's time, but really came to prominence in Rebbe Nachman's time, the Haskalah movement, the so-called Enlightenment, which wanted to get rid of any restraints, okay, especially moral restraints. But you begin with the easy restraints like kashrus and Shabbos. I mean, technically they're easier than moral restraints to undo, because there is a certain feeling of revulsion to engage in immorality. You already have to have rejected other portions of Torah. Okay. So the idea is that this whole psalm is about not only the nations rejecting David HaMelech and rejecting Hashem and Mashiach in these times today. He was speaking about these times, but our own inner struggles with this. And the psalm tells us that Hashem sits in the heavens and laughs at all of this. Okay, laughs. Okay, why is he laughing? Because he knows they don't have real power anyway. And if we remember the Tower of Babel in the Torah, okay, the people, the nations gathered and they climbed and they built this tower way up into the sky because they were going to conquer Hashem. All right, now we have today, it's quite amazing to me. And I have a lot of Baruch Hashem Russian friends and Russian students who also can't believe this. Students from the former Soviet Union. Many are from Russia, many are from other regions of the Soviet Union, who can't believe that communism is having a resurgence. And I want to bring today's events into it because I really think it's relevant for us, because everybody has to make a choice right now. We have to make an external choice and an internal choice. Okay. And the choice is, who do we stand with? Who do we stand with, externally and internally? Do we stand with those who believe that human beings can create an ideal society from the top down, like communism, which of course is not an ideal at all, because of course, really the only people on the top are an elite group? Or do we believe and trust in Hashem? And do we look towards the political world, the world at large, the communities around us? Do we look to them for answers? Or do we look to Hashem for answers? Okay, who are we looking to? And, you know, I don't want to, if you would mind muting yourself, thank you. I don't, somebody's not muted. Okay. I don't want to, belabor the point. If somebody's not muted, please mute. Thank you. I don't want to belabor the point about politics, but it just kept coming to me so much that there really is a political divide, and it happens within the Jewish community as well. And the political divide comes down to, are we going to trust visionaries who are human and flawed? Or are we going to trust our Torah? Are we going to trust Hashem? Are we going to trust our true tzaddikim, the true tzaddikim? So don't hedge your bets and trust Hashem, because Hashem will prevail, obviously. But for right now, it can be very tempting. For those of you who are of a political bent, and I know there are a couple of you in this class, I would really encourage you to learn about Marxism. And I'm surprised I'm saying this, but I think it's important. And to Marxism, and to understand how Marx himself believed in God. And he said in his writings, he made a pact with the Satan, okay, with the devil, okay. That's what he said. He made a pact with evil. And so I would encourage you to really, if you're confused about this issue and why socialism is just, communism light, please take a look. Now, how does this affect us in the Jewish community? And I'm not talking politically, I'm talking about community-wise. It affects us very dramatically. We've been so influenced, especially in America, to really believe in this kind of idealism that's deeply, deeply flawed and at its root evil, that we have kind of turned a blind eye to a lot of the problems that it's caused where we are in the West. I'm not just talking about, North Korea and China and Cuba. I'm talking about right here, okay? And it can affect our communities too, because people who aren't familiar with how this pulls us away from Hashem and what this is really about. It's about making an elite group at the top, just like the Philistines wanted, an elite group of human beings who had their own vision and rejected Hashem's vision, okay? If we do that, we lose. We lose our which we'll go on to read in the Psalm, we'll lose our status as Hashem's firstborn, his chosen ones. Okay, you have to be very cautious with this. All right, now, reason again why I brought this up is because I know that a couple of you are a political bent, and also, again, I know there are a lot of Russians who are going to be watching this and who understand how what we have to be aware of today, and how it's affecting us, and how it's affecting us in the medical world as well, and health and everything. Okay, I don't usually talk politics, but I had to bring it up. Okay, now, in this beautiful song, we understand that there's a moral law, okay, the Torah, that Hashem has totally, I'm sorry, people are coming in and out of the waiting room, a moral law that Hashem has totally given to us, and that the people at the time are rejecting. And this is the battle that we have. This is the battle that we have throughout history. And it's the battle that we have going on. And this inner battle reflects the external battle, and the external battle reflects the internal battle. And this is very much what this psalm is about. And it's just so powerful that David lived this with this battle with the Philistines, with the Philistines. He lived it with this battle. He saw what they were about. They were virulent in their hatred of him. They had to wipe out the Mashiach, the anointed one of that time. Okay, they had to wipe him out. They tried very, very hard. Now, we're going to, I really want to continue with, okay. this idea of what Hashem says to us in verse 7. Okay, so let me find it. Okay, so David says, Asapra el chok, Hashem amar elai, b'ni ata ani, hayom leditcha. Okay, I am obligated to proclaim that you are my son, and I have born you this day. I've given birth to you this day. I've begotten you this day. All right. So Hashem, who's he talking to? And what was David saying? So who Hashem is talking to is the Jewish people. We are Hashem's children. We are his firstborn son. Hashem gave birth to us, so to speak. Okay, we are his Bechor, his chosen one. This is what we know Hashem is referring to. The nations of this world, if you are on, please mute. The nations of this world all took this idea and twisted it, as is must be very obvious whether you have heard this verse before or not, or paid attention to it. This isn't speaking about a person, it's speaking about Israel. Okay, Israel is his son, the nation of Israel, the Jewish people. Okay, and Hashem's reminding us, he gave us life. He chose us. And that's who we owe our allegiance to, not these ideologues and crazies in the world. Not even the good governments in the world do we owe our allegiance to. We have to be allegiant and follow the laws of the land. It's required. We actually have to daven for the safety and success of good governance. But our ultimate allegiance is to Hashem, and that's it. Because we trust that what our eyes see today, even with good governments, okay, and even with supposedly good moral people, is still not Torah, and still can turn corrupt and do a backflip in 2 seconds, as we've seen recently, okay, as we've seen recently in our political history in America. So we must focus on our allegiance to Hashem. He's our Tate in heaven. He's our Abba in heaven. And when we think about this, we also understand from this beautiful, beautiful idea that Hashem says he's begotten us on this day. What does it mean? Hayom, today, this day. So the idea is that every day we are given a chance to live this whole new start as if we were just born that day. Rabbi Nachman alludes to this quite a bit, to treat every day as the first day of your life, the first day of the rest of your life, okay, to wake up in the morning and to recognize that Hashem really gives us every moment of life, again and again and again. He creates us and he sustains us. He didn't just create us and sit back and sit up there like this. No, that's not our Hashem. Our Hashem is intimately and intricately involved with every moment of our life, from the second we begin to open our eyes in the morning until just that moment before, 24/7. So this psalm is showing us that no matter who's attacking us, who wants to undermine Hashem, who attacks this concept of Hashem's chosen, we can reject that. Okay, and we should reject that. And how do we reject it? We don't have to reject it with hatred. We just have to reject it by believing in ourselves and believing that we are chosen. When a person genuinely believes that they are part of Hashem's people and that they are chosen, and then acts on it, they act with moral responsibility. They act with nobility, okay, with refinement. They keep this awareness in mind that Hashem gave birth to them that day. And one of the things in Psalms that David HaMelech really captures for us is this beautiful idea of this very deep interpersonal relationship with Hashem. I think I mentioned this in the introduction to this course, but the idea that we say Tehillim, and we're supposed to find ourselves in it, as Rebbe Nachman says it's a supposed to. Look for yourself. It's a command. Look for yourself. Find yourself in Tehillim. And David HaMelech, we know his psalms were the fruit of his hitbodedut, his conversations with Hashem. We know they're divine. We know they're divine prophecy. We know he composed them with Ruach HaKodesh, but the melodies and lyrics that came to him either came to him in their present form in some cases during his hitbodedut, or they came to him in another form and he redacted or edited or refined them for us so that we can say them and find ourselves. Now, I wanted to mention to you that this psalm is a segula, okay? It's a segula for two things. One is storms at sea, okay? And the other is headaches. Why headaches? I don't know. But storms at sea, we know that that if somebody finds a storm at sea, the first thing they should turn to is Hashem. Maybe with a headache also, with everything, we should just turn to Hashem first and make that relationship the focal point and let that relationship really be the one that defines our next move, okay? Now, there's Tamar asked, what is the conflict between David and Shaul? And if you go back to the beginning of the class, I don't know if you heard it, I describe it in a nutshell. So when this posts on YouTube, you can go and listen to the beginning of that conflict. I mean, he was the king and he was jealous and he knew that he was taking over and he had and he knew the people loved David and did not necessarily love Shaul, okay, at least not as much as David. Okay, now I had a request to when we say our Tehillim of the day to also begin by saying the psalm that we're learning. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you the Segulas that I found for all the other. I just have to find my list. All the psalms that we're going to say today. And I just mentioned the segula that this psalm is associated with, storms at sea and headaches. None of us are on a boat, so we're all fine with that. If you have a headache, maybe this will help. We're going to say this psalm first and then the psalms of the day. And the psalms of the day are Psalm 135, which is helpful for anyone who wants to return to Hashem. It helps stir the heart. And it opens up pathways. We'll talk, obviously, when we get to that psalm. Psalm 136, the same. Psalm 137 is to take hatred away, to blot it out. Not only hatred from others, but really hatred from your own heart. It's so important. So important. Can't really get to that next level of closeness to Hashem if you have an ayin hara or hatred for someone, chas v'shalom. Next, Psalm 138, which comes after 137, is to increase your love. In general, increase love among the Jewish people and your communities, our communities. Next, 139 is to improve relationships between husband and wife. Now, I know someone who would say this psalm 10 times a day. She was really going through a crisis. She thought the marriage was over. And she said this psalm literally 10 times a day for many days. I don't know how long, I don't remember. And she feels that it absolutely saved her marriage. It's very interesting. The psalm changed her as well. So it has a positive effect. And then the last psalm for today, for this day of the month, the 28th day of Cheshvan, is Psalm 140, which also is about taking away any negative feelings between a husband and a wife. Okay. So hopefully you all don't feel like that, but if you do, this is human life, and these Psalms can help. So first we're going to say Psalm 2, and then we're going to say Psalms 135 through 140 inclusive. I want to thank again so much Esther Alagorovich for sponsoring this. I'm trying to jam in a lot in half an hour. There's we can only do so much, but hopefully you took something from it that's going to inspire you when you say this psalm, and I hope so. And there's more food for thought, and you'll maybe read your own commentaries on it. Okay, there's a lot of good commentaries. Actually, I want to recommend one right now. Rebbe Nachman, The Power of Psalms. There are 2 volumes of this. It's by David Sears, who's just a brilliant human being, very creative, and it's commentary, Breslov commentary on Psalms. Unfortunately, there's only 2 volumes, and it doesn't finish the whole book, and I don't know that they're going to be able to finish the whole book, but it's worth it just for the first. I think it comes up to about 80 Psalms. Okay, so we're going to start. I'm going to turn off the recording, but we will all be together here saying Psalms to ourselves.